morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jaya Mangapot, and I am your host for today, and I welcome you all for this day's episode of Salamat Doc. Math in Arts and Humanities, Math in Social Sciences, Math in Science, Technology, and Engineering. Walang duda, sa lahat ng oras at pagkakataon, anumang sektor o larangan na iyong kinabibilangan ay tiyak kasama natin ang sipnayan o ang mathematics. Kaya naman sa araw na ito ay dadagdagan pa namin ang inyong kaalaman, partikular na sa paggamit ng mathematics bilang instrumento sa pagbubuo ng ating mundo in the areas of life science, medicine, and operation research. So this includes the use of mathematics to address health-related concerns, explain biological phenomena, and inform decision makers about making the right choice. So this day we are glad that we have guest speakers to elaborate about this subject matter. Our first set of speakers are experts in the field of biology. They both graduated from the University of the Philippines, Baguio, with bachelor's degree in biology. Please welcome Mr. Sagani Caspe and Ms. Corinne Evangelista. Our next speaker is a medical practitioner who is currently an internal medicine resident at Philippine General Hospital. Let us give her the warmest round of applause to Ms. Denise Hamias. Our last speaker for this episode is an operations research analyst who graduated from the Ateneo de Manila University. We have Ms. Jenica Bagilat. Kaya naman, huwag na nating patagalin pa at simulan na natin ang diskusyon at sabay-sabay tayong matuto dito sa Salamat Doc. Give us knowledge about the contribution of mathematics in the field of life science, let us all welcome our first speakers for this day, Mr. Sagani Caspe and Ms. Corinne Evangelista.
As discussed in the previous episodes, it would be limiting to situate mathematics in the context of computation and quantitative discipline alone. Mathematics has progressed and is flexible enough to counter existing arguments and provide analysis and explanation even in the field of life science. This discussion will deeply analyze the contribution of mathematics in the field of life science and how it can provide specific explanations on the various areas of interest in the discipline. Good day, everyone! First, we would like to thank Salamat Doc for inviting us for today's discussion. We are deeply honored to discuss to you all the vital contribution of mathematics in the field of life sciences. I am Sagani Caspe.
And I am Corinne Evangelista. We are a group of computational biologists whose field of work specializes in assessing biological and statistical data to further develop models that will serve as a framework in understanding relationships, processes, and systems in the biotic environment.
With that being said, this is an emphasis that mathematics plays a vital role in understanding the processes in the biotic environment. But before delving deeper into the contribution of mathematics in the field of life science, I think it is a requisite to understand first the definition of life science itself. As the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines, life science is a branch of science such as biology, medicine, and sometimes anthropology or sociology that deals with living organisms and life processes. This field deals with overarching explanations regarding the processes and relations of living organisms. But how is mathematics applied in such a field? This is what the discussion will further expound on. Among the most significant contribution of mathematics in the field of life sciences is its mathematical explanation of the forms of nature. Benoit Mandelbrot explained that the forms of nature could be explained through the use of fractal geometry. As described by Mandelbrot, fractals are described as shapes that look jagged and broken, which is subsequently, when observed carefully, is a clear illustration of the shapes and forms of nature such as mountains. Mountains take many shapes and forms, which is why they could not be single-handedly characterized as a triangular-shaped landform because their forms differ from each other. Additionally, Mandelbrot also mentioned that fractals could be created by breaking a smooth shape into pieces over and over again, which is the explanation of the irregular forms of nature. The landscape can be made by starting with a simple triangle, breaking the triangle into more parts, and adding more triangles repeatedly to create a depiction of a mountainous terrain through the process of what mathematicians called iteration.
Now moving on to the self-similarity characteristic of fractal geometry. It is an overarching characteristic of nature forms, as explained by Mandelbrot, is that when nature forms are zoomed in, up into their most minor or smallest parts, their structures are one and the same. The patterns composing the whole form are similar to each other. As the BBC discussed in 2014, the whole of the fractal looks just like a part, which looks just like the next smaller part. The similarity of the pattern just keeps on going. A prime example is the branching pattern of the trees. The overall tree structure is composed of branches which are then reflected on the patterns of the smaller branches. This is what was meant in the self-similarity characteristic of the fractal geometry in nature forms. The pattern for the whole structure is similar to the patterns of the smaller parts, just like how you can create a landscape by combining triangles. Another example is the measurement of the dimension of coastlines, which the fractal geometry can also explain. Mandelbrot emphasized that the rougher the edges are, the higher the fractal dimension, which explains the various measurements of coastlines around the world. For the relationship of mathematics and patterns in organisms, not only is mathematics limited in explaining the forms of nature, but it can also describe how patterns in organisms, such as the patches of a cow or the scales of a fish, are developed. As explained by Alan Turing, Turing's theory expounds that the patterns in an organism's appearance are dependent on the abundance of activators and inhibitors. Activators are described to stimulate the production of substances. On the other hand, inhibitors slow them down. If activators are more significant in numbers than inhibitors, the results lead to an abundance of spots because the activators are spread evenly, like that of a cheetah. However, when the overall system is limited in space like a strip, stripes are the observed patterns. It is also important to note that the patterns depend on how fast the activators spread. The speed of activators will cause them to join with different spots, creating a pattern similar to that of a labyrinth. These are only some of the explanations that expound on the massive contribution of mathematics in the life sciences. Indeed, the application of mathematics in certain disciplines will not only aid in further understanding the processes of nature and organisms,
but will also help in determining particular solutions to the problems that we have been trying to embark on. The massive contribution of mathematics in the field of life science signifies the flexibility of the field even in the biotic environment.
Maraming salamat po Mr. Sagani and Ms. Corinne sa ibinigay ninyong aral patungkol sa ugnayan ng mathematics in the field of life science. Talaga nga naman, we have understand the processes in the biotic environment, the forms of nature by the use of fractal geometry by Benoit Mandelbrot, and the patterns of organism by the use of Alan Turing's theory. So we will now move on to our next speaker, and join me in welcoming Ms. Denise Hamias, who will talk about the relationship of mathematics in the field of medicine.
Currently an internal medicine resident in the Philippine General Hospital, and I'm very happy to participate in today's discussion of mathematics and its applications in the sciences and medicine. So oftentimes when you think of math, diba nasa isip lang natin numbers, formulas, equations, and the like. it's a very quantitative-oriented field to a lot of people that it undermines its significance in other fields such as medicine. Definitely, ang mathematics ay maraming contribution sa development ng medicine, and medicine as a field is a very qualitative-oriented one. Dito natin makikita yung interrelation and intersection ng iba't ibang disciplinary fields sa overall advancement and development ng technology and life. And I would like to emphasize this by discussing mathematics as a tool particularly utilized in the field of medicine. So as discussed by biologists Corinne and Isagani earlier, fractal geometry has a big impact on every branch of science, including medical fields. Sabi ni John Wheeler, no one will be considered scientifically literate tomorrow who is not familiar with fractals. It goes to show that fractal geometry as an area of mathematics is considered highly important and even revolutionary. Mandelbrot, as discussed earlier, formalized the concept of fractal dimension. Fractal geometry attempts to explain the behavior of chaos in nature. It is basically self-similar, and the part of an image is exactly similar as the whole of the image. This self-similarity of a fractal is very important. So fractal geometry is not only applicable to that of natural and life sciences. It's also utilized in the medical field, especially in the medical research. The human body in itself is an example of fractal geometry. Our lungs, brain, and vascular systems are all fractals. One good example of the application of fractals in the human body is the rhythms of the heart. So, Boston cardiologist Ari Goldberger, buong professional life niya, he has been studying the rhythms and patterns of the heart, or what we call the heartbeat. Si Galileo Galilei, it was reported that he used his pulse at a time with the swinging of a pendulum motion. That introduced the idea that the normal heartbeat was like a metronome. But Goldberger and his colleagues found out that the old theory was wrong. The heartbeat is actually not constant and it fluctuates a lot. So nag-compile sila ng thousands of heartbeats from thousands of people, and yung buong pattern, it looked very familiar. The pattern created was close to the rough edges of the mountain ranges in Mandelbrot's book. Ang healthy heartbeat pala ay mayroong fractal architecture, and it's a signature that one day may help cardiologists spot heart problems much sooner. Another example of fractal geometry and its impact on medicine is discussed by Richard Taylor. Ang naging main question nila ay, what is the eye doing that allows it to absorb so much visual information? So, ni-record nila yung data ng trajectory kung saan tumitingin yung mata, and the pattern also revealed a fractal dimension. This helps them find out the natural way the eye wants to absorb information. More and more physiological processes of being are found to be fractal. Pero even before the universal recognition of fractal geometry sa field ng mathematics, hindi lahat ng scientists convinced na malaki ang may tutulong niya to bring about new knowledge. Skeptics argued that it's done little to advance mathematical theory, until biophysicist Peter Byrne and his colleagues used fractals as a practical tool and a way to develop mathematical models that might help in diagnosing cancer earlier. Detecting tumors is one of the big challenges in medical imaging, and ultrasound can only do so much, but it does give a good picture of the overall movement of blood. Ginamit nila yung fractal geometry to make a mathematical model. What fractals do is they give you simple rules by which you can create models, and by changing some of the parameters of the model, you can change how the structure look. And yung model na na-develop nila showed the flow of blood in the kidney. Yung una through normal blood vessels, and yung pangalawa through vessels feeding a cancerous tumor. They found out that instead of being neatly bifurcating, looking like a nice elm tree, the tumor vasculature, or simply the arrangement of blood vessels, is chaotic, tangled, and disorganized, looking more like a mistletoe bush. And the flow of blood through these tangled vessels looked very different than in a normal network. A difference doctors might one day be able to detect with ultrasound. So, laging inisip ng doctors na kailangan ang medical images natin sharper, more precise, and more microscopic in terms of its resolution para makita kung ano talaga yung information na nandoon sa isang structure. and fractal geometry gave them that microscopic information without actually having to look through a microscope. And itong fractal approach na ito may be helpful in distinguishing benign from malignant lesions in a way that hasn't been possible up to now. It may take years before fractals can help doctors predict cancer, but they are already offering clues and stepping stones. In the future, fractals may help us to understand different biological processes and even to fight against cancer. Fractal geometry is a rapidly growing area of mathematics with immense potential, and within a few years, it can help us to explore the mystery of tumorigenesis, classifying other disease entities, and ultimately, to help us unfold the many mysteries of human life.
Salamat po, Miss Denise. Ang galing, di ba? Ang mathematics ay hindi lamang sa numero or sa formulas or sa computation ng formulas na hindi lubusang maintindihan ng mga kagaya kong hindi biniyayaan ng katalinuhan sa larangan ito. Ating nalaman ngayong araw ang interrelation at intersection ng different disciplinary fields and progress and developments of technology and life. So napag-alaman rin natin ang fractal geometry dimension and its connection to the rhythms of the heart, trajectories, and tumorigenesis. So thank you po, Ms. Hamias.
Ayan, thank you for having me rin. Salamat, Doc. It was a pleasure having to impart knowledge to everyone today regarding math and medicine. Sana marami kayong natutunan from my talk. So thank you so much for inviting me.
So yun, at para sa ating huling talk ngayong araw, ay makakasama natin ang ating research analyst, operations research analyst na si Ms. Jenica Bagilat to give us an information, an overview of what an informed decision maker is all about. Go ahead, Ms. B.
Thank you, JM. Now I'll be discussing about operations research. First, let's have a breakdown of the words. Operations. Operations pertain to the performance of practical work. It may also pertain to any various mathematical or logical process. In the field of medicine, it is a procedure done on the living body for the restoration of health. Research. Research is generally defined to be a careful investigation aimed to revise, discover, or interpret theories and laws. These two words put together make up a field in life science which is called operations research. It is all about finding the right solutions, right strategies in solving problems, thus making you an informed decision maker. The question is, how? Have you ever heard about mathematical modeling? Yes, it's where you find mathematical models. This strategy, I would compare it to the Naruto's Kage-Bunshin technique, because you get to replicate problems by creating a prototype and testing all optimal solutions on it. To find the right solution, you can apply it to the right or actual problem. Let's check out my example. Suppose you want to sell your own economical box. This is on industrial marketing. Economical in the sense that one can compute the cost of the package if it were to be measured at the space it occupies. Your company is going to make its own box. Now it's up to you to make the most economical box you can make. Given that the box should hold 0.2 meter per cubes or 20 liters. Given that it should have a square shape and has a double thickness on the top and bottom. And given that the cardboard costs 30 cents per square meter. Go ahead on the procedure. Step 1. Draw a sketch of the box dimensions. As shown on your screen, here are the dimensions you will use on the box. Step 2. Make the formulas. Step 3. Make a single simple formula including the cost. Step 4. Plot it and find the minimum cost. And step 5. Do your recommendations of the cost per box. Here are tips on how to improve your model. You can include the cost of the glue, staples, and labor of assembly. You can also include the wastage when cutting the box shape from the cardboard. Another would be testing the quality of the box, whether the box's shape is good for packaging, handling, and storing. Lastly, you can add any idea you can have improving your model. That's it. That's how mathematics comes in handy with operations research. This is only one of the various problems where you can use operations research. A little reflection would be that operations research came with the emergence of World War II, where researchers tried to find strategies in winning battles. But now, we can realize that we can use operations research with our own everyday battle. When we decide on our career path, when we deal with our financial problems, and also when we are facing some life-changing dilemmas. We can make models and put in all possible solutions on it and finally somehow we get to the right choice. But even if we don't get there yet and not always choose the right choice, we can always learn something from it and do better next time. Well, that is all for Operations Research. Again, this is your Operations Research Analyst, Ms. Maria Jenica Bequilat. Live long and prosper. Back to you, JM.
Maraming salamat po, Miss Jenica. New knowledge sa relationship ng math sa operations research. At isa sa hinighlight ni Miss Jenica ay ang mathematical modeling. Yung araw na ito ay masasabi kong punong-puno ng aral, lalo na sa connection ng mathematics in the field of life science, medicine, and operation research. Ang dami kong nasulat na kaalaman sa aking notes sa episode na ito. Sa tunay nga ng mathematical patterns do not only exist for aesthetic reasons because we have learned that with critical thinking and by asking the right questions, purpose can be revealed and behind these patterns na may malaking ambag sa larangan ng medicine and life science. Ang isa pang takeaway natin ay ang ambag ng mathematical modeling to simulate real-life situation. Sa advancement or development na meron tayo ngayon ay hindi na nakakapagtaka na sa tulong ng mathematics, it can mimic biological systems and to construct or create a world that we live in by just using mathematical concepts. Hindi lang yan, nalaman rin natin na sa tulong ng computer simulation at ang mathematics ay kaya nitong i-predict o hulaan ang result or outcome ng present situation. Dahil rin sa mathematics, ay makapag-create ng mga models in operation research na may malaking tulog o ambag sa progress, advancement, and development sa pamumuhay nating mga tao at para sa future o kinabukasan ng ating mundo. Once again, thank you for listening and thank you for your cooperation for this day's episode of Salamat Do. So magkita-kita muli tayo sa next series. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you!